Welcome to my basement, hopefully for the last time, huh? Chapter 14, Future Challenges. I hope that I gave you some tools you can use. We covered a lot of information, and the object has always been for you to have a better understanding and willingness to build bridges with other cultures. It's great to have the group around us that we know and we're comfortable with. But it broadens you so much to experience other cultures. So if you have an opportunity while you are a college student to study abroad, please take it. And a lot of people say, well, I just want to finish school and I can go travel later on. It costs a whole lot more to travel on your own dime. So if you get a chance, take it. Hopefully you understand the best way to reduce conflict is communication and tolerance. Communication has to be a two-way street. But you cannot hear somebody else, the listening part of communication, if you don't have any tolerance. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to be converted by them. But hear them out. Have an open mind. As the world shrinks through technology and travel, contact zones have increased. Identity, religion, nation, class, gender, race, and civilization are often interdependent. One leads to the other. And a lot of times, most Americans are Christian. We're not all Christian. Most Turkish people are Muslim. They're not all Muslim. But they interchange with one another. I mean, if you're born in the United States and your parents are Christian, you're probably going to be raised as a Christian. Contact zones cross traditional boundaries. It used to be everybody was separated, and every now and then you'd run into one another. We're running into one another all the time now. And because the contact zones cross traditional boundaries, oftentimes we run into a nation state versus religion or religious group. Or we might have ethnic, tribal within national boundaries. There are a lot of ethnic groups in the United States that have conflicts with other ethnic groups. There are a lot of tribes that have conflict with other ethnic groups or other tribes. So it's not just out there anymore in the distance where we might run into somebody. It's everyday life now. And conflict is not a thing of the past. Religious wars, the Crusades, Knights Templars versus the Muslim, that was a long time ago. In Ireland, the Catholics versus the Protestants, that was, I don't want to say it was a long time ago because I lived through that. But y'all might think that was a long time ago. We have conflicts going on right now. I met a gentleman from Hong Kong at a conference, and he's Asian, and he coughed, and a bunch of people wanted to beat him up. Get out of here with your COVID. You brought it here. Da, 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 da. Most Asian people didn't bring it here. Most Asian people were already here. But we still have this conflict, and we have to deal with that conflict. And so we're going to talk about a few things. Class isn't necessarily what it used to be, especially like in India where they had the class structure, and you had the untouchables, and you had the Maharajas and all these other people. Class nowadays is more based on the haves and the have-nots. I go to Rotary. There's a lot of people that are well-to-do at Rotary. I'm not. But I fit in there. We don't have the class association there. But I have gone to events where I was not of the upper class, and I got treated like that. I got treated like that in the university because I didn't have my PhD. I was teaching. Had a class load just like all the PhDs did, except I hadn't finished my PhD yet. Therefore, I wasn't one of them. And so these are educated people. We still had this problem. Worldwide, nearly 1 billion people cannot afford to buy food. Think about that. I know you've all been hungry, but have you ever been hungry like days because you couldn't afford to buy food? While other people have money to blow. When I was working for the Columbus Cottonmouths, we sold jerseys in an auction. I saw a couple pay $1,200 for a game-worn jersey. Their kid put it on and went sliding across the ice on his butt on the shirt. If I did that to a $20 shirt, my mom would have a cow when I was a kid, and my wife would have a cow now. So we still have a big difference. China has 18% of the population and 10% of the farmable land. There's a whole bunch of poor people in China that are hungry. I know you may have been told by your mom when you were growing up, eat everything on your plate, there's people in China starving. I know mine did. But they're actually buying farming land in the United States and other countries to help feed their country. So, gender. Globally, we're moving toward equality. Globally. But we're not there yet. There are still some countries where women are considered second-class citizens or less. And as long as we have that disparity, there's going to be gender cultural problems. But every culture does not view gender the same. In the United States, women did not work outside the home unless they were teaching school or maybe a nurse. And then World War II came and all the guys went over to fight because we wouldn't allow women in combat, and so women stayed here and did everything else. And they got a taste of it, and they say, hey, I like this. Other countries haven't had that opportunity. Population is also a problem. The poorer countries have more children. And there's a reason for that. They want to have somebody to take care of them when they get older. And there's no contraception and all those other things. But my mom's generation, she had 11 sisters and brothers. They owned a farm. They worked the farm. You had big families to work the farm to get the food to put on the table. And to have somebody left, hopefully, to take care of you when you got older. But gender is going to be one of those things that it's going to take a long time to figure out, because cultures have so many different perceptions over the years, the centuries that they built up on where women should be and where men should be and what is right and wrong. Race, skin color, and ethnicity. Skin color and ethnicity are major regulators in human life. I hate to say that. I really do. But it's the truth. And it's the truth for a couple of simple reasons. First of all, it's easy to see who they are. If they don't look like us, they're not us. I gotta sneeze. During World War II, the American soldiers were fighting in Europe. It was hard to tell who a German was unless he was wearing a uniform. When they were fighting the Japanese in the Pacific, it was a lot easier because they didn't look like us. The problem we had was there's a whole lot of Japanese Americans that were actually interned in basically a prisoner of war camp because we were afraid that they were going to be spies. So us and them is centuries old. And unfortunately, the more civilized, which is the next category, often thought because we were civilized and they were heathens that we were better than them. But every human has a value, and that was wrong, in my opinion. I don't want to stand and preach. Civilization. Huntington defined 8 civilizations: Western, Confucian, Japanese, Islamic, Hindu, Slavic Orthodox, Latin American, and African. Some people argue that's oversimplified. And he did that not too long ago. You know, if he'd have done it 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 300 years ago, there'd have been a lot different. You know, 600-700 years ago, before Spain conquered or found South America, the native indigenous people there didn't speak Spanish and they weren't Catholic. But they invaded, they took it, and they changed their culture. When the English came to the United States, they took it and they changed the culture. And they used some dastardly ways to do it. Infecting the Native Americans with smallpox, which they were not immune to, was an effective way to get rid of them so they weren't so bothersome. But most people today would agree that that form of germ warfare and any other form of germ warfare is not ethical. Japanese, because they were an island separated from most everybody else. Confucian, most of the rest of Asia. Hindu, the Indian continent, subcontinent. Slavic Orthodox, Russia, the Siberian, that area there. African, the African continent. Islamic, Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula. Turkey, a few other countries in Asia. Kyrgyzstan is a Muslim country, not a Confucius country. And Western. Now the map they show in the textbook, Western is like the United States and Canada and Europe and Australia. Those places settled, conquered, whatever, by England mostly. So, although India was conquered by England as well, or inhabited, colonized by them, the English traditions didn't take as much of a hold there. So maybe instead of saying Western, they could say English. I don't know. He pretty oversimplified it, and I have to agree with the author of the book. Cultures see the worst in others. You know, they're rude to their parents, and they're greedy, and they don't have any morals. Well, U.S. people have said that about Islamic people, and Islamic people have said that about the U.S., but you're saying the same thing. So you see all these bad things, but you only see the bad in people. You don't see the overall picture. That's one reason Obama did not want to, kept pushing that we are not at war with Islam, we are at war with Al-Qaeda. Because if you actually read the Quran, it's pretty close to the Bible. I probably shocked some Christians when I said that. It is. There's a lot in there that's the same, because after all, they actually believe in the same God. Nation. Nation-state identity is strongest among developed countries. I read that one. The undeveloped countries that still have many tribes or smaller sections in there where they don't communicate and all, a lot of them don't say, I'm so-and-so. They say what their tribe is or their family is. But developed countries, it's this nation thing. And don't get me wrong, I'm proud to be an American. I served in the Army for 20 years, and if you fly the flag and it's all torn up, I get upset. But nation state identity is strongest the more developed a country is. And we're going to talk about challenges to culture, environment, and immigration. The digital age has, some have said, that the digital age has made it possible for a borderless world. And if you are a Star Trek fan, you know, the world wasn't governed by different countries. It was Earth, and everybody got along. And it would be great if that was the case. Now, there was a conflict between Israel and the Palestinians years ago, shortly after the internet got popular. And this government said this government said that, this government said this government said that. And the people actually got on, some Israeli people got on Palestine websites, the chat rooms at the time, and said, look, I don't know what we're fighting about. Palestine's got on the Israeli chat rooms and said, I don't know what we're fighting about. And the war ended pretty soon because the people weren't behind it. During Vietnam, which is long before y'all's time, I remember seeing a bumper sticker that said, what if they gave a war and nobody gave a damn? If the people could get along, it'd be great. Future challenges to identity. Who are you? Who will you become? You know, when I talked about identity, I told you about all the identities that I had. The most prominent one, unfortunately, is blind. And the sad thing about that is I'm read 20, regular type. I have tunnel vision. I can't see things, so I'll trip over them, so I use a cane. But I can see. You know, when the doctor told me I was blind, I said, I can't be blind, I can see. Because I didn't realize what legal blindness was, but there was a lot I wasn't seeing and I didn't know it. And I would prefer, just to be Vern or Professor or Dad. But I'm blind this, blind that, blind the other. I was at a conference of blind people, and I found out that I am too sighted to be blind, and I'm too blind to be sighted. In the visual community, I have a visual impairment and I'm blind. In the blind community, I have so much vision left that I can see and read regular type. It's almost like, well, you're not really blind. You can see. So your identity is going to change. You may be a Republican. You may be a Democrat that you're not right now. You may be independent. I don't know. You may be a Coloradan. You may be a politician. You may be whatever. You may be a German citizen by the time you're 40. I don't know what you're going to do. But your identity is going to change. And the question is, how much of your old you are you bringing with you? Challenges to culture. Our culture is threatened by, or cultures, I should say, are threatened by other products and tradition. That's the way we've always done it here. Okay, is it wrong to try a different way? Our tradition is we have turkey on Thanksgiving. Well, I don't want turkey, I want a ham. No, that's not how we do things. Or I spent a lot of time in Italy, and I'd love to fix lasagna for Thanksgiving dinner. Lasagna? No, we're having turkey. And that's something simple. Think about all the other things that we deal with. Challenges to environment. What will happen to you and your kids and your grandkids if they destroy the rainforest. You're all educated enough to know that oxygens take carbon dioxide out of the air, and trees take carbon dioxide out of the air and give us oxygen. And a lot of people where there's rainforest, they're poor, and look, I need to burn this down to build a farm here so I can have sell some vegetables and get some money. But if we keep burning down the rainforests that are converting to oxygen to put something that doesn't do as good a job, what's going to happen to our environment? But do we have the right to tell another country, no, you can't do that? Pollution, going unchecked. We have all these rules about drilling oil and pollution and all this other stuff. Some countries don't have them. China, for example, not the last Olympics, because that was in Japan, but the one prior to that was in China. And the air was so bad, you had to have a mask to breathe and filter out the air. You remember when the pandemic started and everything shut down? They were showing pictures from some of these countries, developing countries, that were so polluted you couldn't see the mountain range 10 miles away. And because everything shut down, now you can see it. Well, it doesn't just stay in that country. It doesn't just stay there. The winds blow it around the earth, so we get it too. So what's going to happen if pollution's unchecked? Eco-imperialism, the book talked about. A lot of people are afraid of eco-imperialism, especially in developing countries, because basically what that means is the powerful are taken care of and the marginalized aren't. The powerful are protected. Challenges from immigration. Both poor and rich countries are concerned about immigration. If everybody leaves that poor country, there's nobody left in that country to support the country through taxes and Social Security and take care of all the old folks and all that other stuff. They call it something else in those other countries. But then the rich countries are like, well, I don't want all these people coming over here because when they come over here, this, that, and the other. A lot of people complained about jobs. I don't want them to come over and taking all our jobs. Well, a lot of Americans won't do those jobs because they're too good. I'm not going to go out in the field and pick peas and peanuts and cotton. So they get these immigrant workers to come in. And then people are complaining that they're here. But if they weren't here, you wouldn't be eating. Immigration in the United States has varied over the years. We discussed that. We had, of course, the English come in, and then we had the Italians come in, and the Germans come in, and Irish come in. And every time a new group came in, they were the bottom of the class ladder, shall we say. And it's changed. A lot of people are concerned about immigration from our southern border. The textbook talks about we actually have more people from India and China than we do from Mexico. But what is wrong with other people coming? In my opinion, anyway. If you were not able to support your family here, would it be such an outlandish idea to go somewhere else? Another problem with immigration is the greater the diversity, the less community involvement initially. and I say it initially, and the textbook brought this point out. You know, when a small group of Martians moves into Columbus, and they think that since they can't see the color red, that a stoplight should be purple, yellow, and blue, or green, yellow, and blue. They're not going to fight to get it to change because there's not enough of them. It doesn't matter, there's only a few of us, and you know what? They're not going to listen to us. But the good thing about it is eventually the different cultures start coming together, building bridges, creating a social solidarity. Because what's good for this group's kids in school is good for this group and this group and this group. So they come together on those things eventually. Challenges from economic disparity. I was reading the other day that CEO versus worker pay, like 50 years ago, CEOs made 26% more than workers did. And then 30 years ago, 25 years ago, CEOs made 100% more than workers did. Now CEOs make 500% more than the average worker. Can a culture survive with such disparity between the haves and the have-nots? And no, I'm not saying that we should take the money from the rich and give it to the poor. I'm not saying play Robin Hood. I'm just saying that as long as we have this economic disparity, we are going to have conflicts and cultural conflicts within our nation state. And they may show up at the election booth, they may show up for taxes, they may show up in boycotts for companies. I don't know where all they're going to show up. But we have a disparity between the rich and the poor. During election time, you might hear the politicians or the pundits on TV talking about the 1%. Like 1% of the U.S. population controls 90% of the wealth. And I know you're all in college to have a better life, to get a career, a job, a degree that will allow you to have a career and a job that will make more money. But you have to be aware that that disparity is there. And people talk about different things. Al Newhart, who started USA Today, wrote a book, and in the book he was describing the CEO of the newspaper he was working for every day had his lunch at the Woolworth counter down the street. Woolworth is a 5 and dime store that had a little counter, and you could go in there and get something to eat for $1. Now the CEO could afford lavish meals, but he went there because he wanted to hear what the people were talking about. Of course, he ran the newspapers. He was trying to, find stories for the newspaper and da-da-da. But he didn't have to go there and eat. He could have had his catered up to his office or gone to a fine restaurant with white tablecloths. But he went because he wanted to hear other people. Remember I was talking earlier about having an open mind? Have conversations with people that aren't in your cultural circle so you can see different things. The promise of a new media, good and bad. It's great to get 24-hour news. It's bad to get 24-hour trash. The good thing about the news, when I was very young, there was 3 channels, and basically they all talked about the same thing. The bad thing about it was The gatekeepers in those three networks were three old white guys. And so they talked about stuff that was important to three old white guys. They didn't talk about everything else. And it's nice we can get information about things that are concerning us, the things that are important to us. But the problem many people have is called a silo effect. They get in this social media circle and these news channels that repeat the same thing they believe, which reinforces their ethnocentrism in many cases. And you don't get to hear the other side. So the new media, it's great. You can get all kinds of information. But you have to be aware that everything on the internet isn't true. How are you going to use what you've learned in this intercultural communication class? What are you going to do to improve your intercultural communication? Everyone, of course, is not going to take this class. You're the lucky few. Everyone won't have this opportunity. So it's up to you to share things to build bridges. How can we move forward with so many conflict zones and so many different conflicts? Every time you turn around, there's some argument, da 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 da. And a lot of them, instead of looking for differences, a lot of them can be solved if they look for similarities. And the other thing that can help it is if you open your palate and taste what's on their plate. So build some bridges. I hope this class helped. The test will be online, multiple choice, the last half of the book. And the paper is a self-reflection paper. What do I mean by that? How have you grown? Please don't tell me, Professor Humphrey, you're such an excellent instructor. I'm so glad I took this class. Don't get me wrong, flattery feels good, but I don't want that. I want you to tell me, you know, this chapter about so-and-so, identity, it was amazing to me because I never had looked at it that way. Or I understood that and I pretty much agreed with them, but I disagreed on this aspect right here. It's a self-reflection paper. Reflect on everything you read, everything you discussed, and tell me how you've grown. So first person is fine. If you cite something because it was great, and I hope you do cite something, cite it APA style and put it in the reference section. Whether it's the textbook or maybe an article that the textbook pointed out. Thank you for being my student. Remember my email address and my phone number if you need me. Feel free to yell at me. Well, contact me. Yelling's not nice. Thank you for being my student. Have a great day.